What up, guys? Thank you guys for tuning in for the Shots with Jay channel. I do appreciate it. You know, this is a small channel, but I am trying to make the subscribers rack up whenever I can, little by little. So any support that I do get, I do appreciate. It's here, guys. The time is now. I know I said I would post it a while ago, but here I am with it, right? The Beretta APX A1 Tactical. We're gonna go ahead and go over everything regarding this piece. So this is the way it comes out of the box, everything that you get, excluding the compensator and the light. So first things first, let's go ahead and make sure this bad boy's clear, right? Clear, clear. Alright guys, so this is the Beretta APX A1 Tactical. I went ahead and put this compensator on it with my homeboy. Beretta APX A1 Tactical, right? So this is a full-size piece. You know, it's not meant for concealed carry at all. You know, you probably could if if you wanted to go ahead and take the comp off and maybe put like a micro comp, you know, maybe run it up when you're wearing a jacket or something like that. But in my opinion, this is not for concealed carry whatsoever. This is for, you know, war, home defense, things like that. And rightfully so. You know, every size is, you know, for its own purpose. You know, in my recent videos I went ahead and went over some compacts and micro compacts, things like that, but right here this is a full size that we're dealing with. So right off the bat, I know one of the big things that I had with the other pieces I reviewed were that I didn't like how the serrations went all the way up the way they were in the back side of the slide. But check it right here, guys, if you guys can see that in the back right here, they go all the way to the top, right? But right here it's not shortened. It's exactly the same way it is here. So that's really good for press checks or, you know, really anything that you're dealing with. So that's something I really like right off the bat. Serrations, I got to give those some points right there. This is a 4.8 inch cold hammer forged barrel, and you know, it's Beretta. Beretta is a really good name, a really good brand. You can't really go wrong with it. It says right here, this is made in Italy. So this is an Italian firearm. I know some Berettas are made in the US these days, but it's an Italian company and a lot are made in Italy, and rightfully so. You know, I'm a believer that they should be made where the company originated from, but at the same time, you know, when they're built in America, you know, those have some pros as well. But I do like how this one is made in Italy. So this is Italian right here. Another thing I like right off the bat is the OD green color combo. So you see how it's black with the OD green. I think that looks really cool, especially how they did, you know, the contrast with the black grip and the black magazine right there. I just think it looks super dope. And you know, eventually when this thing does have a dot on it, I think a green dot would go much better than a red dot. But a red dot would be pretty cool too. But I think green dot would be really good for this. Now, speaking of a dot, right? Something that I'm going to tell you is these sights, the back rear sights, they're blacked out, but so are the front, and there's no dot on either sight. There's no indicator at all. So in other words, it's pretty hard to run this thing without an optic. So that's one of the cons that I will give it right off the bat. It definitely does need a dot. It's designed for a dot. It's not designed to be run with the irons or anything like that. You know, you could definitely, if you know you're in close proximity, things like that. But you know, with the Beretta APX A1 Tactical, it's designed for a dot because the irons just, they don't cut it on their own. You know, if you look at the comparison with other brands and what they have to offer, you know, you get some night sights or fiber optic or a blacked out rear, but you have a dot in the front, whether it be tritium, fiber, anything like that. This one doesn't have that, right? They're both blacked out. And what that tells me is that, you know, running irons is going to be pretty tough. It's meant for a dot. That is without question. Now, out of the box though, you do get some back straps that you can go ahead and put. And that's really cool because, you know, according to different hand sizes, you can go ahead and put you know, different types of straps. So you have like medium, small, and large. This is a small and the medium. So right here we actually got on the large. It's for bigger hands. You know, my homeboy, this is actually his piece right here. I appreciate it. Shout out to Chef. He let me go ahead and review this for my channel. He does have bigger hands, so he runs the large on this. Now, it does come with two 23 round magazines. That's awesome. I also like how they're not plastic. Not trying to diss Glock or anything like that, right? But I'm a really big fan of metal magazines because I just think they're more durable. You know, more shock absorption, things like that. You know, if they fall, God forbid, you know, anything goes wrong during those times or when you're reloading. You know, I do know that Glock, you know, they have metal inserts and things like that, but the exterior is still plastic. You know, that could still crack. It has happened before. I've actually seen it in a couple of videos. So even though it's not the worst, right, because of the metal inserts, thank God, right, because there's some that are just straight plastic throughout the whole way, you know, inside and out. I just prefer it being metal just for those reasons. You know, and not trying to diss Glock like that or anything, you know, they also do have tons of companies that make metal magazines, things like that. So you can't really go wrong with that. The Aftermarket is just great. But going back to the Beretta, it does come with two 23 round magazines, but that's what it comes with. It doesn't come with anything flush. From my understanding, you can go ahead and buy a flush 17 round mag online or from their website. But just, you know, you can tell the way it comes from the box, two 23 round magazines, but it doesn't come with anything flush. To me, that's saying, you know, it's meant for home defense. It's meant for war. This is not meant for concealed carry. It just isn't. You know, it's a really big piece, a 4.8 inch barrel, and it's a really good barrel too. You know, Beretta makes one of the most accurate barrels you can get, one of the most durable. Beretta is actually the longest standing company from the oldies. You know, a lot have shut down and everything, but from my understanding, Beretta's been around for over 500 years or around 500 years. So, you know, I think they could talk. Just to put it straight like that. So, two 23 round magazines, how it looks without it, and how it looks with it. I think it looks awesome. And I did shoot this a couple of times on the range, and I can tell you guys, the ergonomics, they're just so on point. You know, there's a lot of pieces where after a while, you know, after a couple of hundred rounds, you're gonna get some burn or some rash, or, you know, the stippling may hurt with the texturing. No, I could tell you like this, it's ready to go right off the box. You don't even need goon tape, you don't need anything like that. You don't need to put, you know, any pro grips or anything like that, even Hogue. Hogue is nice, right, with the rubber, but like this, I would keep it like this. I think the ergonomics and the texturing are just perfect. It even has texturing up here, if you notice. You know, usually when it has texturing in the front, it'll just have it like on one slot, but here it has it on two, depending on your hand size. You know, if you want to run it like that, or put your thumb a little more forward, just to help with that control. So it puts it on both, and yes, that would be on both sides, if you can check that out. So that's really awesome. I think that that's something that's overlooked, and it's something a lot of companies don't offer these days. So here it is from the top of the slide. You can see right there, there's the optics plate that you can go ahead and take off. Another thing, the finish, right? You can just tell that the quality right here is super good. You can tell it's going to be corrosion resistant. You know, I think this slide finish is going to go ahead and last for a long time. I don't think you're going to get any scratches or anything like that, at least not until this thing is like pretty much beat up. That's just the way it is. I also like the takedown method. Right here it has the lever, so you can go ahead and take that down. I don't want to take it apart, just, you know, due to YouTube being softies these days. I don't want to get a strike or anything like that, right? Because they do that whenever you show internal sometimes. I've seen it from a lot of gun tubers. But I do like the takedown method rather than the two little levers that you take apart. I like the big release lever right here. You pull this down, take the slide back, right? It's a lot better like that, especially, you know, sometimes it can be hard, you know, with the Glock style takedown, if like you have big gloves or like if it's muddy, things like that depending on the environment that you're in. I think when you reach things like this, methods like this for the takedowns, I think it's pretty much good for any type of scenario. In addition, if you notice the takedown lever right there, it actually has serrations on it, and that's so it's easy to take apart no matter the environment that you're in. Now, even without the compensator, right, I feel like this is a pretty flat shooting piece. And of course it could be due to the barrel length, because you know, typically the longer the barrel, you know, the more mass is in the front. So whenever you get more mass in the front, you know, whether that be a light, a compensator, or anything that's added to the tip point, you know, that's going to down the recoil from the front, which makes it pretty flat. You know, and that was without the light or the compensator. So if you're adding the light on and the compensator, I feel like it's even more flat shooting. So who does this compete against? Honestly, the price is not bad at all with this. I think this is extremely underrated. You know, you don't see too many videos on this one on YouTube. You know, yeah, they're out there, right? But you see usually the mainstream stuff, or you know, when you see the Berettas, you see that it's usually more of their hammer-fired products. Obviously with this piece, they're intending to go ahead and be a competitor in the striker-fired market, and I think they did really well. In addition, this is the full size. They also have the compact version of this, even the OD green, all of that. It's the A1 Tactical compact, and this is just the A1 Tactical. Man, this thing it really is a beauty. Chambered in 9mm. I know the original APX, back then, I know that they actually do have one chambered in 40, but of course the main caliber that they tried to release this in was 9mm, and rightfully so. You know what I mean, 9mm is more popular than any other caliber these days, but they did go ahead and offer that back then. But that was not the A1 Tactical, it was just a regular APX. Now with this one, the APX A1 Tactical, they only offer it in 9mm. So you know, you would have to go ahead and settle with 9mm if that's something you mind or don't mind. You know, it all depends on what your preferences are. But I can tell you, you know, you're getting 23 rounds out of the box, you know, and just like that. And if you're counting both mags, you know, that's 46, excluding the ones you have in the head. So 46 rounds of 9 ready to go on tap. I think that's really cool. Let's go ahead and check out this trigger. All right. So bags out. All right. Here is the take up to the wall. Let me go ahead and make sure it gets focused a little better. All right, there you go. So right here, that's a safety blade. And of course, I do like when they do have these safety blades, because if God forbid you ever drop the piece, it's not going to pop off, because this needs to be pushed down first in order for the trigger to go off. You know, if you don't go ahead and take this safety blade push down first, it can't go off. You know, you can try as much as you want and it's not going to. So that's the reason for that. You know, there are other purposes for that, but that's the main purpose. So let's go ahead and take this. Okay, so about there is when the safety blade is all the way pushed back. So let's try and push now. Keep going. All right. Pretty short reset. Not long at all. Now, in a more practical use, yeah, it's a pretty good trigger. I know they also do offer some trigger upgrades, which you could do if you wanted to, but I don't think it really needs it. I think it's pretty good for at least the way it is. You know, it's, you know, in the name tactical, it's not really for competition. This is for, you know, real life use. You know, this is ready to go bang at a moment's notice in the night or something like that. So I think the trigger is good just the way it is. And if you also notice the shoe, let's check out the trigger. Right here, it's kind of like a flat blade, but then once you reach down on that, the trigger is semi-curved. And I do like that because I don't know why a lot of people don't like curved triggers. You know, everybody's about the flat face, or, you know, the apex flatties these days. I really like curved triggers. I think they just hug the finger in a way that the flats can't. But everybody has their own preference. You know what I mean? Yeah, I do like the trigger. Now, as far as like, you know, accessories and things like that go, it does come with a rail, so you can hop on any light or laser. Obviously, it's meant for an optic, so this is meant to eventually be upgraded. This will happen. Just give it a little bit of time, and eventually I'll show this with the dot up there. Now, in terms of aftermarket, that is where it's going to be a little bit limited. But the good thing is that this comes ready to bang right out of the box. So what that means is that you don't need to do all these upgrades, you know, the way you would with some other companies. So what you pay for is what you get. I feel like you get a great package, you know, right out of the box. And if you wanted to, you could go ahead and upgrade the trigger, but it's definitely not needed. The only thing that is needed, in my opinion, would be the dot, the optic. And if you wanted to, you could swap out the sights. I'm not sure if they're Glock compatible or what different sights they have. But, you know, this is meant for an optic for sure. Now, in terms of aftermarket, I know it is limited, but on Beretta's website, you can pretty much get whatever you need. And that can be, you know, you can even get the barrel just to fit flush right here at the head, at the muzzle point. So if you don't want a threaded barrel, you know, for whatever reason, maybe you're trying to conceal it at some point for whatever reason, you could go ahead and do that. So Beretta does sell different magazines, different barrels from their site, but it's tough to get all these things from different sites other than Beretta. So in regarding to any add-ons you want to do, Beretta would be the route for this one. You know, straight from the source, which is good too. You know, so this would be a pretty good option. Now, I'm not really too sure on durability testing, you know, such as like the way they've done the torture testing with like MMPs or with Glocks, things like that. But this is Beretta. This is the company that's been around, you know, 500 years. So they can definitely talk. They're extremely durable, and that's just gone with all of their pieces in the past. And I'm sure this one is no different. You know, this is something that I could pretty much vouch for. Just with that name, is that what you're paying for? You know, Beretta, Beretta is definitely no slouch. And some may argue, you know, the people who have been the longest in the game have the most credibility. And I definitely see that argument as well. The Beretta APX A1 Tactical. Man, this is a really solid piece. You know, this is just a laser and a light that my homie put up there. But you can definitely put like a TLR H1, or you can go ahead and put an O-light. I know a lot of people, you know, they shame O-light for what happened with that incident, but you know, they're good lights. There's just so much you can do with this. I feel like this is something really good that you don't need to do anything to. And there are a few companies like that offer a lot of things outside of the box. And I know last time I went over the PX9, it was a similar situation. You know what I mean? Where you get a lot of bang for your buck. But the thing is that has a lot less credibility than this. And that's because, you know, the PX9, it's from TISAS. They're a newer brand. They're not exactly that established yet, you know, to the fullest. This is a Beretta. You know, Berettas are, whenever you hear someone say Beretta, you know it's going to go bang every time. You know, this thing has never even had a malfunction other than it being like ammo related or something like that. But even if you hold it improperly, which you shouldn't, right? You know, people say, oh, well, your limp wrist thing, it's not going to pop off. No, this thing will pop off. It goes every time. So far, it eats, you know, any type of grain. So that's, but we do run 124s though. I will say that. My homie likes to run 124s in this one. You know, and for his smaller pieces, he'll do like 115s or something like that. And, you know, considering it's a 4.8-inch barrel, you're getting a lot of velocity out of this. You're borderline 5-inch, and it's threaded. So that means you can hop on compensators, suppressors, silencers, all of that. So I think it's really good. Another thing, the mag release right here, It is also textured, and it's pretty huge. Aside from it being a white surface, it does pop out. So I don't think that's anything that needs to be upgraded or anything like that. And an additional, it's reversible. Check that out right there. Now, this is not reversible from my understanding, the takedown lever, but I could be wrong. It may be, but definitely the magazine release is reversible. In addition, right here, you have the slide release. Guess what? You have it on this side too. Very solid option. I don't think you can go wrong with this at all. It even flexes right here a little bit, you know, on the name APX. And right here on this side, Beretta, and then made in Italy. Such a solid piece. Honestly, you know, if anybody's ranking this thing, it shouldn't go below an 8 for anybody. I think it's extremely underrated. And I think this can definitely hang out with the big boys and the top dogs up there. You know, 23 rounds. This is no slouch. And, you know, if you have one in the head, you got 24 rounds ready to go. So, let me know what you guys think. The Beretta APX A1 Tactical. Such an awesome color combo. You can't go wrong with this piece. Let me know what you guys think. I appreciate it. Thank you guys.